TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Syria has once again blamed Israel for an aerial strike which targeted Aleppo International Airport at dawn, a second such bombardment this month. Israeli security forces apprehend 27 suspected terror operatives as part of extensive counter-terror activity throughout the West Bank districts of Judea, Samaria, and the Jordan Valley. The Israeli parliament passed an amendment to the 2005 disengagement law, paving the way for the reconstruction of Israeli communities in Samaria, which were razed in parallel to Israel's unilateral disengagement from the Gaza Strip in 2005. Syria has once again blamed Israel for an aerial strike which targeted Aleppo International Airport at dawn, a second such bombardment this month. Several minutes before 4 a.m., unidentified aircraft launched a salvo of missiles from the direction of the Mediterranean Sea, with a reported trajectory which spanned over the skies of Latakia toward Aleppo International Airport. Consequently, Syria's aerial defense array was triggered in an attempt to intercept the incoming projectiles. However, according to a Syrian military source who was quoted by the Damascus-controlled Sana news agency, the bombardment caused some material damage at the airport. Meanwhile, Syria's Ministry of Transport announced that all flights have been diverted from Aleppo Airport to the airports in Damascus and Latakia, as repair work of the damaged runways and other infrastructure has commenced. It is worth noting that the IAF spokesperson's unit has not confirmed or denied Israel's alleged responsibility in response to TV7's request for comment. Nevertheless, intelligence officials noted that Tehran continues to operate civilian means of transport to smuggle sophisticated weaponry into Syria, which Jerusalem unequivocally defined as a red line. Meanwhile, in the West Bank districts of Judea, Samaria, and the Jordan Valley, IDF, ISA or Shin Bet, and Border Police Special Operations Forces conducted extensive counter-terror activity overnight and this morning as part of Operation Wavesbreaker. During the course of the operational activity, the IDF Samaria Brigade, alongside other operational forces in the Palestinian city of Nablus, conducted a physical assessment ahead of demolition of a house belonging to the terrorist who was responsible for the abhorrent terror attack in which Hallel and Yagel Yaniv were murdered in the village of Hawara approximately 3 weeks ago.
הלילה חטיבת שומרון פעלה יחד עם כוחותיה למיפוי הנדסי של בית המחבל שרצח את האחים הלל ויגל יניב זיכרונם לברכה בחווארה לפני כ3 שבועות. המיפוי נעשה כחלק מבחינה לקראת ההריסה. המשימה הזאת היא ערכית וחשובה מאוד, ואנחנו נמשיך לפעול כנגד מבקשי רעתנו.
Alongside this engineering operation, Special Operations Forces apprehended a total of 27 suspected terror operatives and confiscated relatively large amounts of weapons and munitions throughout the West Bank. It is further important to know that during the course of the operational activity, gunfire and explosive devices were directed toward the Israeli forces on a number of instances. Nevertheless, thankfully, no injuries were reported. In other yet related news, the Israeli parliament, or Knesset in Hebrew, passed an amendment to the 2005 disengagement law in a third reading, effectively paving the way for Jewish residents of 4 Israeli communities which were evicted and subsequently destroyed by the IDF in the northern part of Samaria, to essentially rebuild legally upon the government's pending consent.
בעד 31, נגד 18, החוק עבר בקריאה שלישית.
It is important to explain that the disengagement law was enacted to enable Israel's unilateral disengagement from the Gaza Strip in 2005, as part of which 4 Israeli settlements in the northern Samaria region, including Chomesh, Senur, Kadim, and Ganim, were evicted because these were situated on lands that were said to have been previously owned by residents of 2 nearby Arab villages. And while prospects of re-inhabiting these lands were repeatedly deemed as highly unlikely over the years, parliamentary representatives of the Jewish settlement enterprise, who managed to secure 15 mandates in the last national election, have pledged to legalize a return and rebuild the previously evicted communities.
הכל קיים פה חוץ מהאנשים והבתים. האנשים שגורשו והבתים שהוחרבו, ועכשיו אנחנו באנו לתקן. פה יהיה בעזרת השם יישוב.
The Palestinian leadership naturally deplored the adopted amendment to the disengagement law, claiming that it paves the way to alleged Israeli plans of asserting Jerusalem's sovereignty over the West Bank districts of Judea, Samaria, and the Jordan Valley.
أنا بعتقد أنه ما يسمى مستعمرة حومش وغيرها عندما يتم العودة إليها هذا الأمر يؤكد بما يدع مجال للشك على أن هذه الحكومة ماضية في تثبيت وقائع على الأرض وفي محاولة استمرار حربها المفتوحة ضد الشعب الفلسطيني.
The Palestinian official went on to call on the international community to hold Israel accountable, insisting that all disputed lands, including East Jerusalem, are defined as occupied Palestinian territories per UN Security Council Resolution 2334, which was adopted in 2016 when the Obama administration, merely 4 weeks before leaving office, decided to waiver its veto power by abstaining, while the United Kingdom, France, and Ukraine joined the other council members in voting in favor of the resolution. Meanwhile, in Washington, the U.S. State Department took the unusual action of summoning Israel's ambassador to the U.S., Michael Herzog, to a meeting to express its concern over the adopted amendment to the disengagement law. Under Secretary of State for Political Affairs Wendy Sherman met with Ambassador Herzog, during which she highlighted the importance of all parties refraining from actions or rhetoric that could further inflame tensions leading into the Ramadan, Passover, and Easter holidays. Moreover, during a press briefing, State Department Deputy Spokesman Vedant Patel publicly highlighted the Biden administration's concerns.
The United States is extremely troubled that the Israeli Knesset has passed legislation rescinding important parts of the 2005 disengagement law, including the prohibition on establishing settlements in the northern West Bank. At least one of these outposts in this area, Homesh, was built on private Palestinian land, which is illegal under Israeli law. It is all the more concerning that such a significant piece of legislation passed with just 31 yes votes out of an assembly of 120 members. De-escalating and reducing violence are in all parties' interests, including Israel's. The U.S. strongly urges Israel to refrain from allowing the return of settlers to the area covered by the legislation, consistent with both former Prime Minister Sharon and the current Israeli government's commitment to the United States.
The State Department's deputy spokesman went on to highlight the Biden administration's position regarding Israeli communities in Judea, Samaria, and the Jordan Valley.
We have been clear that advancing settlements is an obstacle to peace and the achievement of a two-state solution. This certainly includes creating new settlements, building or legalizing outposts, or allowing building of any kind on private Palestinian land or deep in the West Bank adjacent to Palestinian communities, all of which would be facilitated by this legal change.
Patel went on to assert that the bill, which could have been avoided if the Israeli opposition would have attended the vote, was regarded as a breakaway from pledges made to the United States by both past and present Israeli governments.
The action also represents a clear contradiction of undertakings the Israeli government made to the United States. Nearly 20 years ago, Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, on behalf of Israel, affirmed in writing to George W. Bush that it committed to evacuate these settlements and outposts in the northern West Bank in order to stabilize the situation and reduce frictions. The amendments to the disengagement law are also inconsistent with Israel's recent commitments to de-escalating Israeli-Palestinian tensions. Just 2 days ago, Israel reaffirmed its commitment to stop discussion of any new settlements for 4 months and to stop authorization of any outposts for 6 months.
In response to the vigorous criticism emanating out of Washington that included the summoning of the Israeli ambassador, which is highly unusual to the bilateral U.S.-Israel relations, the office of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released a statement in which it insisted, quote, "The Knesset decision to repeal parts of the disengagement law brings to an end a discriminatory and humiliating law that bars Jews from living in areas in northern Samaria, part of our historic homeland. It is no coincidence that senior figures in the opposition have supported this law over the years." The statement further added, however, in an apparent effort to alleviate tensions vis-à-vis the Biden administration, that the government has no intention of establishing new communities in these areas. It is worth noting that incumbent Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was among the few members of the Likud party at the time who voted in favor of the disengagement law on February 16, 2005. Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. If you're blessed by our productions and would like to help support TV7 Israel's ongoing operations, which are exclusively donation-based, please consider making a financial contribution. You can do so at www.tv7israelnews.com. Separately, we would like to encourage you to pray for our persecuted brothers and sisters worldwide, as well as for the peace of Jerusalem and the salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hassan wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, we'll see you again tomorrow at the same time.